The Galactic Council had kept peace for 12,000 cycles. That was longer than most species could remember. 18 different races from all corners of the known universe had signed treaties and made promises. They built a floating city called Narath Prime, and from there, they ruled everything. Ambassador Velith of the Morani people was drinking warm tea in her private chamber when the transmission arrived. Her assistant rushed in with fear in his eyes. His blue skin had turned pale, almost white. "Ambassador, you need to see this," he said. His voice was shaking. Velith took the datapad from his trembling hands. She read the message once. Then she read it again. Her cup fell from her fingers and shattered on the floor. The tea spread across the marble like blood. The Keth Collective had returned. For thousands of cycles, the galaxy believed the Keth were dead. They were a nightmare from ancient times, a species of hive-minded creatures that moved as one. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They only consumed planets, resources, people. Everything they touched became part of their collective, and everything else was destroyed. Now they were back, and they had brought hundreds of thousands of ships. Velith ran through the corridors of Narath Prime. Other ambassadors were running too. Everyone had received the same message. The distress signal came from the Outer Rim. From a small colony world called Tethys 4, the colony had 3 million inhabitants. By the time the signal reached the council, Tethys 4 no longer existed. Speaker Orin called an emergency session. He was an old creature with gray scales and tired eyes. He had led the council for 200 cycles, and in all that time, he had never looked so afraid. The great chamber filled with holographic images of delegates from across the galaxy. Some were present in physical form. Others appeared as light and shadow, joining from their home worlds. All of them wore the same expression: terror. "The Keth fleet is moving toward the inner systems," Orin announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Based on their current speed, they will reach populated space within 3 cycles. Murmurs spread through the crowd. 3 cycles. That was not enough time to evacuate. That was not enough time to prepare. That was barely enough time to say goodbye. General Tomac of the Vorian Empire stood up. He was a warrior, covered in battle scars and medals. He had fought in 17 campaigns and had never lost. But even he looked small in this moment. "How many ships do we have?" Tomac asked. "Combined across all member species, we can gather approximately 40,000 vessels," a military aide responded, "and the Keth. Our sensors count over 800,000. The chamber fell silent. The math was simple. The answer was death. Ambassador Velith stood up. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to speak. "We must find another way. There must be something we have not considered. Some weapon, some ally, some strategy." "There is nothing," Tomac replied. "I have studied every battle the Keth have ever fought. They do not make mistakes. They do not feel fear. They simply advance and consume. Our only hope is to slow them down long enough for some of our people to escape." "Escape to where?" Another delegate shouted. "The Keth will follow. They always follow. They will not stop until everything is gone." Arguments erupted across the chamber. Species blamed each other for being unprepared. Old hatreds surfaced. Someone threw a drinking glass, and it passed through a hologram harmlessly. The hologram flickered and continued shouting. Speaker Orin slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor. The sound was like thunder. Everyone stopped and turned to look at him. "Enough," he said. "Fighting among ourselves will not save us. We must think clearly." But no one had clear thoughts. Only fear, only despair. The greatest civilization in the galaxy was about to fall. There was nothing anyone could do about it. Then a small voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "What about Earth?" Everyone turned. The speaker was a junior delegate from the Rethani Consortium. She was young, barely old enough to hold her position. Her name was Mira, and she immediately regretted opening her mouth. Because the chamber exploded, delegates screamed. Some covered their ears. Others fell to their knees. The Vorian general knocked over his table. Ambassador Veleth felt her heart stop beating for a moment. "No," someone shouted. "Absolutely not. Are you insane?" Another delegate cried. "Do you want to kill us all faster? The humans are worse than the Keth. At least the Keth are predictable." Speaker Oren raised his staff again, but this time his hands were trembling. He did not slam it down. He held it like a shield, like protection against something terrible. "We do not speak of Earth," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "We do not contact them. We do not involve them ever. This is the first law of the Council. This is the only law that has never been broken." Myra looked around the chamber in confusion. She was too young to remember. She had only heard stories, and she thought they were exaggerations. "But surely," she said carefully, "if we are facing extinction, we should consider every option. The humans are powerful. They could help us. Help us." General Tomac laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Child, you do not understand. The humans do not help. They do not fight wars the way we do. When humans go to war, they become something else. Something that does not stop until everything is ash." "They are monsters," another delegate said. "Brilliant, creative, unstoppable monsters." "The Keth will kill us quickly," Oren added. "The humans," closed his eyes. "The humans will save us. And then we will spend the rest of our existence wondering if we made the right choice." The chamber fell silent again. Outside, the stars continued to shine. Somewhere in the darkness, the Keth fleet moved closer. And somewhere else, on a small blue planet that the galaxy tried very hard to forget, humanity went about their ordinary lives. They had no idea that the universe was about to ask for their help, and the universe had no idea what it was about to unleash. Commander Park Taiho was eating lunch when the alert came. He was sitting in the cafeteria of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters in Seoul, enjoying a bowl of rice and soup. The day had been quiet. Most days were quiet now. Earth had not received any alien contact in 40 years. His communicator beeped 3 times. That meant urgent. He put down his spoon and checked the message. His eyes went wide. 10 minutes later, he was standing in Director Kong Yuna's office. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had led the UEDF for 15 years, and nothing surprised her anymore, until today. "Play it again," she said. Taiho pressed a button on the display. The alien transmission filled the room. It was not words, exactly. It was more like feelings pushed directly into their minds. But the meaning was clear. "Please, stay out of this. They're begging us," Taiho said slowly. "The entire galaxy is facing some kind of threat, and they are begging us not to help them." Yuna leaned back in her chair. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to a cabinet on the far wall. She pressed her hand against a scanner, and the cabinet opened. Inside were old files, printed on paper, yellow with age. "Do you know what happened in 2089? She asked. "First contact," Taiho replied. "We met the Galactic Council. They invited us to join them. That is the official story. The truth is in these files." She handed him a thick folder. "Read it. Understand it. Then you will know why they fear us." Taiho sat down and began to read. The more he read, the more he understood. And the more he understood, the more he felt cold. In 2089, humanity received an invitation from the Galactic Council. They were excited. For centuries, humans had looked at the stars and wondered if they were alone. Now, they had an answer. The universe was full of life, and that life wanted to be friends. Earth sent a delegation of 50 people to Nerath Prime. Scientists, diplomats, soldiers, artists. They were supposed to represent the best of humanity. They were supposed to show the galaxy that humans were peaceful and intelligent, and worthy of respect. The welcoming ceremony was beautiful. 18 species gathered to greet the newcomers. There were speeches and gifts and promises of friendship. For a few hours, everything was perfect. Then the Vorian radicals attacked. A faction within the Vorian Empire believed that humans were too as primitive to be treated as equals. They saw Earth as a resource to be exploited, not a neighbor to be respected. During the ceremony, they revealed their true intentions. They tried to capture the human delegation and announce that Earth was now property of the Vorian Empire. They killed 12 humans in the first attack. Scientists and diplomats who had come in peace, the radicals expected the remaining humans to surrender. Every other primitive species had surrendered. It was the logical thing to do. The Vorians had superior technology, superior numbers, superior everything. But humans were not logical. The surviving members of the delegation did not cry. They did not beg. They looked at their dead friends, and something changed in their eyes. Something the galaxy had never seen before. The humans escaped. They stole a Vorian ship and flew back to Earth. The Galactic Council assumed that was the end of it. Earth was small and weak. They would mourn their dead and accept their fate. Earth did mourn their dead. They held funerals and cried and hugged their families. Then they went to work. Within 3 months, human scientists had taken apart the stolen Vorian ship and understood every piece of it. Within 4 months, they had improved it. Within 6 months, they had built a fleet of 200 ships using technology that should have taken them centuries to develop. The Vorian radicals laughed when they heard the news. 200 ships against their forces of 10,000? It was a joke. It was not a joke. The human fleet did not attack military bases. They did not target warships. They went straight for the radical faction's home colonies, their families, their food supplies, their fuel stations, their communication networks. One by one, the lights went out. The radicals tried to fight back, but humans did not fight like other species. They did not form neat lines and exchange fire. They hid in asteroid fields and attacked from shadows. They sent fake signals and led enemy ships into traps. They used weapons that the galaxy had banned because they were too cruel. When the Vorian commanders complained that humans were breaking the rules of war, the human admiral sent back a simple response. What rules? The war lasted 6 months. At the end, the radical faction was gone. Not defeated. Not conquered. Gone. Every ship destroyed. Every colony abandoned. Every record erased. It was as if they had never existed. The Galactic Council watched in silence. They had never seen anything like it. Other species fought for territory or resources or pride. Humans fought for revenge. And they did not stop until there was nothing left to destroy. After the war, the human fleet returned to Earth. They did not ask for territory. They did not demand payment. They simply went home and closed their borders. The message was clear. Leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. Bother us, and we will end you. For 40 years, the galaxy obeyed. Tejo closed the file. His hands were shaking. We killed millions, he whispered. We protected our own, Una replied. The methods were extreme, but the galaxy learned to respect us. She paused. Or fear us. The two are often the same. And now, something is threatening them. Something bad enough that they would rather die than ask for our help. Una nodded slowly. The question is, what do we do about it? Tejo thought about the transmission. The fear in it. The desperation. He thought about billions of innocent people across the galaxy. People who had done nothing wrong. People who were going to die because their leaders were too afraid to ask for help. We cannot ignore this, he said finally. Una smiled. It was a sad smile, tired and old. No, she agreed. We cannot. But before we act, we need to know exactly what we are facing. She pressed a button on her desk. Get me Beak Sora from the research division. Tell her we have work to do. Somewhere across the galaxy, the Keth fleet continued its advance. And on Earth, humanity began to wake up. The Hollow Nebula was supposed to be their last stand. General Tomac had gathered every ship the galaxy could offer. 42,000 vessels from 18 species, all united against a common enemy. It was the largest fleet in recorded history. It was not enough, Ambassador. Velith watched the battle from a viewing station on Nearth Prime. The holographic display showed thousands of blue dots, representing the Allied fleet. Red dots represented the Keth. There were so many red dots that they looked like a blood stain spreading across the stars. The battle began at dawn. Nareth time. Tomac led the charge himself, his flagship at the front of the formation. For a few minutes there was hope. The Allied ships fired in perfect coordination. Keth vessels exploded by the hundreds. But for every Keth ship that fell, 10 more took its place. The red dots pushed forward. The blue dots began to disappear. 1 by 1, then 10 by 10, then 100 by 100. Veleth watched as entire fleets vanished from the display. The Marani contingent, the Re-Thani squadron, the Vorian heavy cruisers. After 3 hours, General Tomac sent his final message. His face appeared on the screen, burned and bloody. Behind him, his bridge was on fire. "Tell the council," he said, his voice calm despite everything. "Tell them I am sorry. We were not strong enough." The transmission ended. His ships disappeared. By evening, it was over. Of the 42,000 Allied ships, fewer than 3,000 survived. They limped back to Neroth Prime, broken and defeated. The Keth did not even pause. They continued their advance as if nothing had happened. Speaker Oren called an emergency session, but half the delegates did not attend. Some had fled. Others had simply given up. The Great Chamber, once filled with proud representatives of the galaxy's greatest civilizations, now felt empty and cold. "We have perhaps 2 cycles before the Keth reach the inner systems," Oren announced. His voice was flat dead. "I recommend immediate evacuation of all populated worlds. We should send colony ships toward the outer dark, beyond charted space. Some of our people may survive." "For how long?" a delegate asked. "The Keth will follow. They always follow." No one had an answer. Veleth sat in her chair and listened to her colleagues argue about who would get seats on the evacuation. Some species demanded more space because they had larger populations. Others claimed historical importance. A few suggested drawing lots. The conversation was absurd. It's like arguing about the color of curtains while the house burned down. She thought about her family back on her home world. Her daughter, barely old enough to walk. Her husband, who had promised to take care of everything while she served on the council. Would they get seats on an evacuation ship? Would it matter? Then she thought about something else. Something forbidden. After the session ended, Veleth did not return to her chambers. Instead, she went to the archives. The archives contain records of every species the council had ever encountered, including the ones they preferred to forget. She found the file on Earth. The information was heavily restricted. Most of it had been classified after the Vorian War, as they called it now. But Veleth had high clearance. She could access almost everything. She read for hours. She learned about human history, their wars, their achievements, their strange mixture of cruelty and kindness. She learned about something they called total war, a concept so alien to galactic civilization that there was no proper translation. When humans fought total war, they did not stop at military targets. They attacked everything. Factories, farms, cities, ideas. They broke not just armies, but entire ways of life. And yet she also read about something else. She read about humans who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. Humans who gave their own food to people they had never met. Humans who crossed oceans to help victims of disasters in lands they would never see again. They were contradictions. Monsters and heroes, living in the same bodies. Veleth made her decision. She returned to her chamber and activated a hidden communication device. It was illegal to contact Earth directly. The Council had banned all communication 40 years ago. But Veleth no longer cared about laws. Laws would not save her daughter. She found a signal frequency that human researchers used to scan for alien transmissions. Then she composed her message. She included everything: the Keth threat, the fleet positions, the projected timeline of destruction. She added star maps showing which systems were still safe and which had fallen at the end. She added a personal note. We were wrong to fear you. We told our children that humans were monsters. We used your name to scare them into obedience. We avoided your space and pretended you did not exist. And now, when death comes for us all, we are too proud to ask for help. I am not too proud. I am a mother with a daughter who will die if no one saves her. I do not care about politics or history or fear. I only care about her, please. If there is any kindness in your species, prove us wrong. Prove that the stories we told were lies. Show us that humans can be more than destroyers. Or ignore this message and let us face our fate. We probably deserve it. She signed her name and sent the transmission. On Earth? In a small research facility outside Busan, a woman named Beek Sora noticed something unusual on her equipment. An alien signal, stronger and clearer than anything she had ever seen. She decoded it quickly, her hands trembling with excitement. Then she read the contents. Within an hour, she was on a transport to Seoul, carrying the most important message in human history. The galaxy had finally asked for help. Now, humanity had to decide what kind of species they wanted to be. The war room in Seoul was silent. 20 of Earth's highest military and political leaders sat around a long table, staring at the holographic display. The alien transmission floated in the air above them, its words glowing soft blue dot. Admiral Choi Minho was the oldest person in the room. He had served in the UEDF for 50 years, back when it was just a dream and a few outdated satellites. His hair was white, his face was lined with wrinkles, but his eyes were still sharp. He read the message 3 times before speaking. How many civilians are in the path of this Keth fleet? He asked. Lieutenant Han Jian checked her tablet. Based on the star maps provided, approximately 47 billion across 12 systems. That includes major population centers of at least 5 different species. 47 billion. The number hung in the air like poison. Didn't ask us for help, someone pointed out. This message came from one ambassador, acting alone. The council specifically told us to stay away. Told us to stay away because they're afraid of us, Director Yuna replied. They would rather die than admit they need humans, and let them die. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. He was a young politician, newly appointed. His face was hard and cold. He treated us like monsters for 40 years, he continued. They banned contact with Earth. They told their children we were creatures from nightmares. And now, when they're in trouble, they still don't want our help. Why should we risk our people for species that hate us? The room was quiet. It was a fair question. Many people were thinking the same thing. Admiral Minho stood up slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Seoul was bright with lights, full of people living their lives, families eating dinner, children doing homework, couples walking through parks, normal, everyday existence. 47 billion, he said softly. That's 47 billion people who have families, who eat dinner and do homework and walk through parks, who love and laugh and cry just like us. He turned to face the room. We didn't choose to be feared. We didn't ask for the galaxy to see us as monsters. But we also didn't become what they think we are. We fought back when we were attacked. We protected our own. That's not evil. That's survival. He pointed at the holographic message. But this is something different. This is a chance to show the universe who we really are. Not just destroyers. Not just warriors. But people who help when help is needed, even when no one asks. The young politician opened his mouth to argue, but Commander Taiho spoke first. I've read the files from 2089, he said. I know what we did. And I know why we did it. But I also know this. We're not the same species we were 40 years ago. We've grown. We've learned. We've built something worth being proud of. He stood up. If we let 47 billion people die because we're afraid of what others think of us, then we deserve every terrible story they tell about us. But if we help, if we save them, then we prove that humans are more than our worst moments. The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. 3 days later, the first response fleet launched from Earth orbit. 32 ships, crewed by volunteers who knew they might not come home. Captain Shin Do-yeon commanded from the flagship, a sleek vessel named Hope. It was a small name for such a heavy burden. The fleet traveled faster than any Galactic Council ship had ever moved. Human engineers had spent 40 years improving alien technology, pushing it beyond limits the original designers thought possible. What should have taken 2 cycles took less than 1. When they arrived at the edge of Keth space, Captain Do-yeon called his crew together. The Keth are a hive mind, he explained. They share thoughts through psychic nodes scattered across their fleet. It's their greatest strength. Everything they do is perfectly coordinated, perfectly efficient. No individual thought, no confusion, no hesitation. He smiled. That's also their greatest weakness. The human fleet did not attack immediately. Instead, they began broadcasting on every frequency. But they did not broadcast threats or demands. They broadcast music, every kind of human music, all at once. Classical symphonies, heavy metal, pop songs, traditional folk music from every culture on Earth, jazz, hip-hop, opera. The sounds crashed into each other. Mixed together became beautiful chaos. The Keth had never experienced anything like it. Their hive mind was built for unity, for single thoughts shared by millions. The explosion of human creativity, the wild individuality of songs made by people who just wanted to express themselves, disrupted everything. The psychic nodes began to overload. Keth drones stopped moving. Keth ships drifted off course. The perfect coordination that made them unstoppable started to break apart, and then the human fleet struck. They did not target ships. They targeted the nodes themselves, the centers of the hive mind's network. Each destroyed node sent feedback screaming through the collective. Keth drones clutched their heads and collapsed. Keth commanders lost contact with their forces. For the first time in their existence, the Keth knew confusion. They knew fear. Ground Commander Onari led the surface teams on occupied worlds. Her soldiers moved through ruined cities, finding survivors and evacuating them to safety. The work was dangerous. Keth drones roamed everywhere, and without the hive mind to control them, they had become unpredictable on the planet Ver-3. Nari's team found a group of Marani refugees trapped in a collapsed building. Keth drones surrounded them, clicking and hissing. Nari told her team to get the refugees out. Then she walked toward the drones alone. She carried no heavy weapons, just a simple blade at her side. "You don't know what we are," she said to the drones. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You've conquered 1,000 worlds. You've destroyed civilizations older than Earth's existence. You think you're the top of the food chain?" She drew her blade. "You've never met humans before." The fight lasted less than a minute. When it was over, Nari stood alone among the broken drones. Her uniform was torn and stained, but she was alive. The Marani refugees stared at her with wide eyes. One of them, an elderly female, fell to her knees. "You came," she whispered. "They said you were monsters. They said you would never help us. But you came." Nari helped her stand. "We're not monsters," she said. "We're just people who don't like bullies." The footage spread across the galaxy. Humans fighting with impossible skill. Humans rescuing survivors. Humans smiling and joking even in the middle of battle. Humans treating alien wounded with the same care they showed their own. For the first time, the galaxy saw Earth not as a nightmare but as a hope, and the Keth, ancient and terrible, began to run. The war lasted 11 days. For a conflict that saved 47 billion lives, it was remarkably short. The Keth collective, which had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of cycles, shattered like glass once their hive mind broke. Some fled into the darkness between galaxies. Others simply stopped functioning, their drones falling silent without the collective to guide them. Human casualties numbered 1,847. Every name was recorded. Every face was remembered. Earth held funerals for each one. Broadcast across the planet, so that everyone could mourn together. The galaxy watched these funerals with confusion and wonder. They had expected humans to celebrate their victory with pride and fire. Instead, Humans wept for their fallen. They held hands and sang soft songs. They promised to remember it was not what monsters did. 3 weeks after the war ended, the Galactic Council requested a formal meeting with Earth's representatives. Not demanded, requested. The wording was very careful. Speaker Orin had written and rewritten the invitation 17 times before sending it. Commander. Park Tai-ho was chosen to lead the human delegation. Director Yuna insisted on it. You understand them? She said. You've studied their history and their fears. You know how to speak to people who are afraid. They're afraid of us, Tai-ho replied. Then help them stop being afraid. The journey to Nerith Prime took 2 days. Tai-ho spent most of it staring out the window at the stars. They looked different now. For 40 years, those lights had been forbidden territory, places humans could never go. Now there were possibilities. The council chamber was packed when Tai-ho arrived. Representatives from every surviving species had come, some traveling for days just to witness this moment. They parted as Tai-ho walked through, creating a path to the central platform. Speaker Orin stood waiting. He looked older than his images suggested, his scales faded and his posture bent. 40 years of fear had worn him down. But his eyes were clear and honest. Commander Park, he said. His voice echoed through the silent chamber. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to Nerith Prime. Thank you, Speaker Orin, Tai-ho replied. It's an honor to be here. Orin took a deep breath. What he was about to say had been debated for weeks. Many council members had objected. But in the end, there was no avoiding the truth. We owe you an apology, Orin began. For 40 years, we told stories about your people. We called you monsters. We used your name to frighten our children. We banned contact with Earth and pretended you did not exist. He lowered his head. We were wrong. And because we were wrong, billions of our people nearly died. When the Keth came, we were too proud and too afraid to ask for your help. If not for the courage of Ambassador Velith, who broke our laws to save us, we would all be dead. Velith was sitting in the front row. Her face reddened when everyone turned to look at her, but she held her head high. Beside her sat her husband and daughter, alive and safe, because she had chosen hope over fear. You have every right to hate us, Orin continued. We treated your people as less than animals. We refused to see your humanity. He paused. Is that the correct word? Humanity. It is, Tai-ho said. Then we refused to see your humanity. And when you came to save us anyway, when you fought and bled and died for people who had done nothing but fear you, we finally understood how wrong we were. The chamber was completely silent. Some delegates were crying. Others sat in shock, unable to believe what they were hearing. Tai-ho considered his response carefully. He thought about the history files he had read, the stories of human cruelty and human courage. He thought about the soldiers who had died fighting the Keth, and the families who would never see them again. You weren't entirely wrong to fear us, he said finally. We are capable of terrible things. Our history is filled with violence and destruction. We have fought wars against each other that make the Vorian conflict look small. He stepped closer to Orin. But we're also capable of kindness, of sacrifice, of love. When we saw the message from Ambassador Velith, when we learned that billions of people were going to die, we didn't think about politics or revenge. We thought about children who would never grow up, parents who would never see their families again, people just like us who wanted to live. Then why did you help? Orin asked. After everything we did, everything we said about you, why did you risk your lives for us? Tai-ho smiled. It was the same warm, genuine expression that had confused delegates during the war, and it confused them again now. Because that's what humans do, he said. We help, not always. Not perfectly. We make mistakes, and we do terrible things, and we fail constantly. But when it matters, when everything is on the line, we choose to help. It's in our nature. Ambassador Velith stood up from her seat. What do you want in return? She asked. Territory. Resources. Political influence. We will give you whatever you ask. Tai-ho shook his head. We don't want payment, he said. We want something much harder than that. Name it. We want you to stop being afraid of us." The words hung in the air. Simple words, but they carried the weight of 40 years of isolation. "We want to be your neighbors," Taiho continued. "Your partners. Eventually, maybe your friends. We want our children to grow up knowing that the universe is full of wonders worth protecting. We want to share what we've learned and learn from what you know. We want to prove that humans can be more than the stories you tell about us." Speaker Oren was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he did something no council leader had done in over 1,000 cycles. He descended from his elevated platform. He walked across the chamber floor, past rows of stunned delegates, until he stood directly in front of Taiho. He extended his hand. Taiho looked at it. On Earth, a handshake was ordinary. Here, it was revolutionary. A gesture borrowed from the species they had feared for so long, offered in trust and hope. He clasped Oren's hand firmly. "Perhaps," Oren said softly, "we have much to learn from each other." "Perhaps we do," Taiho agreed. The chamber erupted. Delegates who had been enemies for generations embraced each other. Species that had never exchanged words found themselves talking excitedly. Someone started laughing. The laughter spread until the entire room was filled with joy. Outside the great windows of Neroth Prime, the stars burned on. They were the same stars that had witnessed the Keth's terror and humanity's fury. Now they witnessed something new. Hope Ambassador Veleth found Taiho later, after the celebration had quieted down. She was holding her daughter's hand. "Thank you," she said, "not just for saving us, for proving that we can be better than our fears." Taiho knelt down to the child's level. She looked at him with curious eyes, too young to understand what had happened, but old enough to sense that something important had changed. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mira," she said shyly. Taiho smiled. "Hello, Mira, my name is Taiho. It's very nice to meet you." He offered his hand, and after a moment, Mira took it. Her fingers were small and delicate against his rough skin. It was the simplest gesture in the universe. It was also the beginning of everything. Years later, historians would write about this moment. They would analyze the politics and the strategy and the military tactics, but they would always come back to the same conclusion. What saved the galaxy was not human weapons or human technology. It was human compassion, and that, in the end, was what made Earth truly extraordinary.